You know that feeling when you stop crying at movies, when bad news just makes you nod slowly instead of breaking down, when you can watch someone's life fall apart and your first thought is, well, that makes sense? You probably called it growing up, emotional maturity, finally getting your shit together. But here's what they don't tell you in those self-help books gathering dust on your nightstand. The flatness you're wearing like a badge of honor might not be wisdom at all. It might be your nervous system quietly shutting down, one emotional circuit at a time. And according to a 2019 study published in the Journal of Affective Disorders, over 40% of adults mistake chronic emotional numbing for healthy detachment. 40%. That's nearly half of us walking around thinking we've evolved when really we're just dimming. Let me tell you something I learned after spending years in clinical psychology, sitting across from people who thought they had it all figured out. The ones who came in talking about emotional regulation and not sweating the small stuff were often the same ones who couldn't remember the last time they felt genuine excitement, or real sadness, or anything that wasn't this low-grade, persistent gray. And here's the thing that keeps me up at night. You might be one of them. You might be reading this right now feeling that little spark of recognition, that whisper in the back of your mind saying, wait, is that me? So let me ask you directly, when was the last time you felt something that surprised you? Not scheduled joy at a birthday party, not obligatory sadness at a funeral, but something raw and unexpected that cracked through your carefully maintained composure? Can't remember? Yeah, that's what I thought. The term you need to know is emotional blunting, but the clinical textbooks make it sound so sterile, so distant. They describe it as a reduction in emotional responsiveness, like it's just turning down the volume on a radio. But that's not what it feels like from the inside, is it? From the inside, it feels like wisdom, like you finally figured out the secret that everyone else is too dramatic to understand. You're not overreacting anymore. You're not too sensitive like they used to say. You've learned to keep your expectations low, your reactions measured, your heart protected. You've become manageable. But here's what that really means, translated from clinical bullshit into actual human experience. Your brain has started categorizing emotions as threats, not the emotions themselves, but the act of feeling them fully. Because somewhere along the way, probably through a series of small disappointments and medium-sized betrayals and one or two absolutely soul-crushing experiences that you've definitely processed and are totally over, your nervous system learned a trick. It learned that if you just feel less, you hurt less. Simple math, right? Except your brain can't selectively numb. It's not a surgeon with a scalpel, carefully removing only the pain. It's more like a sledgehammer, and when it starts building walls around your capacity for suffering, it buries your capacity for joy right alongside it. Dr. Paul Ekman, who spent 40 years studying human emotion, found something fascinating and deeply unsettling. He discovered that people who suppress negative emotions don't just lose access to sadness or anger, they lose facial mobility. Their expressions actually become less animated over time. Your face forgets how to move through the full range of human feeling. And before you say, well, I still smile, ask yourself this. When you smile now, does it reach your eyes? Or has it become this thing you do with your mouth, this social performance you've perfected? While behind your eyes, there's just calculation, assessment, the constant exhausting work of managing how you appear. There's this case I can't stop thinking about. A 34-year-old consultant, let's call her Maya, because that's what she asked to be called in the research documentation. She came to therapy because her partner said she'd become robotic. Not mean, not angry, just absent. Maya didn't understand the complaint. She was functioning better than ever, hitting her targets at work, maintaining her relationships. She described herself as finally stable after years of what she called emotional chaos in her 20s. She was proud of her growth. The problem? She hadn't cried in 3 years, hadn't laughed, really laughed, longer than that, hadn't felt excitement about anything except crossing items off her to-do list. When her childhood dog died, she felt relieved that she didn't have to schedule visits home around the dog's medication schedule anymore, and that relief scared her more than the absence of grief. What Maya didn't know, what maybe you don't know, is that this wasn't maturity. This was textbook emotional exhaustion masquerading as evolution. And the really terrifying part? It's progressive. A 2021 longitudinal study tracking emotional responsiveness over 5 years found that emotional blunting doesn't plateau. It deepens. Each year, the participants reported feeling less, not because their lives became less eventful, but because their capacity to respond to those events was systematically shutting down. They were adapting to chronic stress the way a plant adapts to drought by letting its leaves die off. Survival mechanism? Sure. Healthy? Not even close. Your brain is doing something really clever and really destructive. It's protecting you from a threat that doesn't exist anymore. Maybe it was a relationship that taught you love means pain. Maybe it was a job that punished vulnerability. Maybe it was a family that treated emotions like weakness. Whatever it was, it's probably over. But your nervous system hasn't gotten the memo. It's still in protection mode, still building walls, still confusing emotional numbness with emotional intelligence. And here's where it gets properly disturbing. You can function like this for years. You can build a career, maintain relationships, appear completely normal to everyone around you. You might even seem more put together than most people, because emotional exhaustion looks a lot like competence from the outside. You're not falling apart. You're not having breakdowns. You're just not really living either. You're managing life instead of experiencing it. And every time someone compliments you on how level-headed you've become, every time someone admires how you don't let things get to you anymore, you're getting positive reinforcement for slowly disappearing from your own life. The worst part? You've probably built an identity around it. You're the calm one, the rational one, the one people can count on not to make everything about feelings. And now, if you were to suddenly start feeling again, really feeling, who would you even be? What Maya eventually discovered in therapy, what I need you to understand right now is that maturity isn't the absence of emotion. It's the capacity to feel everything without being destroyed by it. Real emotional intelligence isn't turning down the volume. It's learning to sit with the full orchestra, even when it's playing something that makes you want to run. But you can't get there from numbness. You can't skip the feeling part and arrive at wisdom. The only way out is through, and you've been spending years building detours. So here's your first homework assignment, though you didn't sign up for this class. Notice when you're supposed to feel something and you don't. Not when you choose not to react, but when you genuinely feel nothing where something should be. Your friend tells you they're getting divorced and you feel administrative, like you're filing information away. That's a sign. Someone shares incredible news and you feel happy for them in this distant, theoretical way, like you're reading about their success in a newspaper. That's a sign. You watch something designed to move people, a movie or a speech or a piece of music, and you can intellectually recognize it's emotional, but you don't actually feel moved. That's not sophistication. That's not evolution. That's your system running on emergency power, and you've been in emergency mode for so long, you've forgotten what full capacity feels like. And I guarantee you this, once you start noticing it, once you really see how much you're not feeling, you won't be able to unsee it. The question is, are you ready for that? Because the next thing we need to talk about is what happens when emotional exhaustion crosses the line from coping mechanism into something clinical, something with a name, something that explains why you can't just choose to feel more, no matter how much you might want to. But that's where this gets really uncomfortable. Because there's a line, a clinical line that most people don't even know exists. And you might have already crossed it without realizing. The line between I'm just tired and I have a diagnosable condition is thinner than the gap between your current self and the person you used to be. Let me introduce you to something that psychiatrists whisper about in case conferences, but rarely explain to patients: anhedonia. It's not depression's sad cousin, it's depression's empty room. The clinical definition is inability to feel pleasure, but that sanitized phrase doesn't capture what it actually does to a life. Anhedonia is when you bite into your favorite food and it tastes like cardboard, when you see a sunset that should be beautiful and you just see colors, when someone you love touches you and you register the pressure but not the warmth, when sex becomes a mechanical task, when music becomes noise with rhythm, when life becomes a series of things you're supposed to enjoy but don't. And here's the really fucked up part. You can have anhedonia without having depression. A 2020 study in the Journal of Psychiatric Research found that 37% of people experiencing significant anhedonia didn't meet the criteria for major depressive disorder. They weren't sad, they weren't hopeless, they just weren't anything. They were functionally empty, and because they weren't crying or threatening to hurt themselves, nobody was particularly worried about them. You want to know what anhedonia looks like in real life? Let me tell you about Marcus. 31 years old, software engineer, came to therapy because his doctor insisted after his third year of perfect blood pressure and perfect cholesterol and perfect attendance at work and absolutely zero libido. Marcus described his life as fine. Everything was fine. His relationship was fine. His job was fine. He went to the gym 4 times a week, which was fine. He had friends he saw occasionally, which was fine. When I asked him what he looked forward to, he stared at me for a full minute before saying, "I don't really look forward to things anymore, I just do them." When I asked when this started, he said, "I don't know. Gradually, I used to be really into gaming, then I realized I was just going through the motions, so I stopped. Then it was cooking, then music, then, I guess, everything." He said this with no emotion, not sadness, not concern, just reporting facts like he was describing someone else's life. And when I asked if this bothered him, he said something that still haunts me. How can I be bothered by not feeling bothered? That's the problem, isn't it? I don't even care that I don't care. This is what advanced emotional exhaustion looks like. It's not a breakdown, it's a systematic shutdown. And your brain thinks it's doing you a favor. See, when you're under chronic stress, emotional, physical, doesn't matter, your brain starts making executive decisions about resource allocation. And emotions are expensive. They require energy, neurotransmitters, cognitive bandwidth. So your brain, in its infinite problem-solving wisdom, starts cutting costs. First, it dims the response to small joys. Little pleasures stop registering as strongly. Then medium-sized good things start feeling muted. Eventually, even major life events land with a dull thud instead of the appropriate emotional weight. It's called affective flattening in the literature, but I prefer to call it what it actually is. Your brain filing bankruptcy on feeling. And just like financial bankruptcy, by the time you notice it's happening, you're already deep in the red. The neuroscience behind this is both fascinating and terrifying. Your ventral striatum, the part of your brain responsible for processing reward and pleasure, starts showing decreased activation in response to positive stimuli. Functional MRI studies show that people with chronic emotional exhaustion have reward circuits that look eerily similar to people with clinical depression. The difference? People with depression know something is wrong. People with emotional exhaustion often think they've just become more realistic, more mature, less naive. But here's where we need to talk about something that makes clinicians deeply uncomfortable: the overlap between emotional exhaustion and what used to be called schizoid personality traits. Now, before you panic, I'm not saying you have a personality disorder. But there's this spectrum of emotional detachment that runs from healthy boundaries on one end to pathological disconnection on the other, and emotional exhaustion can push you further along that spectrum than you realize. People with schizoid traits report not wanting or enjoying close relationships. They prefer solitary activities. They have little interest in sexual experiences with another person. They appear emotionally cold or flat. Sound familiar? And here's the kicker. Many of them aren't born that way. A significant portion developed these traits as adaptive responses to emotional environments where connection meant pain, where vulnerability meant exploitation, where feeling meant suffering. They learned to not need what they couldn't safely have. They adapted, just like you're adapting. The only difference is whether a clinician decides your adaptation has crossed into disorder territory, which often depends more on how much it bothers other people than how much it bothers you. Let's talk about Emma. 28, graphic designer, came to therapy at her mother's insistence because she turned down 3 wedding invitations in a row. Not because she had conflicts, but because, as she put it, weddings are exhausting performances of emotions I don't have access to anymore. Emma had what she called her great optimization at 25. After a brutal breakup, followed by losing her best friend to an MLM cult, she decided emotions were inefficient. She wasn't being dramatic. She literally created a cost-benefit analysis of emotional investment versus return. She started declining social invitations that didn't serve a clear purpose. She stopped dating because the risk-to-reward ratio doesn't make sense. She cut contact with friends who required emotional labor. Within a year, she had 3 work acquaintances, her cat, and a very organized life. She was more productive than ever. She slept well, she had hobbies, solitary ones, that she engaged with methodically, and she felt absolutely nothing about any of it. When I asked if she was lonely, she looked genuinely confused. "How can I be lonely if I don't miss anyone?" she said. "Loneliness is wanting connection you don't have. I don't want connection. Problem solved." Except the problem wasn't solved. The problem was that Emma had successfully amputated the part of herself that wanted connection to avoid the pain of disconnection. And she'd done it so thoroughly that she couldn't see the amputation. She thought she'd just evolved past needing people. This is what emotional exhaustion does in its final form. It doesn't just numb you to pain. It numbs you to the desire for anything that might cause pain. Which, if you think about it for more than 10 seconds, includes everything worth having. Love, friendship, ambition, joy, hope. All of it carries risk. All of it requires vulnerability. All of it demands that you feel things, big things, uncertain things. And when your brain has decided that feeling is the enemy, it starts categorizing all of those experiences as threats to be avoided. You become a fortress with nothing inside worth protecting. But here's what nobody tells you about becoming emotionally fortified. Fortresses are made for war, not for living. They're survival structures, not homes. And you can survive in them for years, decades even, but you're not actually living. You're just persisting, maintaining, existing in this temperature-controlled, emotionally stable, absolutely suffocating box of your own construction. And the worst part? You might not even notice, because noticing would require feeling something about your lack of feeling, and your brain has gotten really, really good at not doing that. So let me ask you something, and I want you to actually think about your answer. If you could push a button right now and feel everything again, the full spectrum, the devastating lows and the transcendent highs, would you push it? Or does the question itself make you tired? Does the idea of emotional intensity sound less like freedom and more like exhausting chaos you've worked too hard to escape? Because if it's the latter, if the thought of feeling more sounds like a threat rather than a promise, that's your clearest sign yet. You're not mature. You're not evolved. You're not finally stable. You're exhausted, bone deep, neurologically, systematically exhausted. And you've built an entire identity around pretending that exhaustion is enlightenment. Maya eventually learned to feel again. It took 2 years of therapy, and it was, by her own description, absolutely terrible for the first 6 months. Marcus is still in treatment, slowly rebuilding neural pathways that had gone dormant. Emma stopped coming after 4 sessions because she didn't see the point. She's fine. Everything's fine. She's living her optimized life in her efficient little bubble, and maybe she's right. Maybe that is enough. But I don't think so. And neither do you, or you wouldn't still be here, reading this, looking for something, some explanation, some permission to admit that you're not okay, that you haven't been okay for a while, that this thing you've been calling maturity might actually be the slow death of your capacity to be human. So here's what we need to talk about next, the part that separates people who recover from people who don't. And I'm going to be brutally honest with you. It's not what you think. It's not positive thinking. It's not self-care Sundays or meditation apps or journaling prompts about gratitude. Those things might help around the edges, sure, but they're band-aids on a bullet wound. The real difference between people who climb out of emotional exhaustion and people who sink deeper into it comes down to one uncomfortable thing: willingness to hurt again. Not suffering for suffering's sake, not some masochistic embrace of pain, but the conscious decision to lower your defenses, knowing, absolutely knowing, that you will get hurt, that people will disappoint you, that things you care about will fall apart, that vulnerability will be weaponized against you at some point, and choosing to feel anyway, choosing to want things anyway, choosing to give a shit anyway, even though giving a shit is precisely what got you into this mess in the first place. This is where most people stop, because emotional exhaustion isn't just numbness, it's also armor, really effective armor that you've spent years forging. And I'm sitting here telling you that recovery requires you to take it off, piece by piece, and stand there naked in a world that already hurt you once. Who the fuck would volunteer for that? Let me tell you about the ones who do. There's this phenomenon in trauma psychology called post-traumatic growth, and it's wildly misunderstood. People think it means you go through something terrible and come out stronger, like some kind of superhero origin story. That's not what it means. Post-traumatic growth means you go through something terrible, and you break, completely, and then you have to make an active choice about what to rebuild and how. And some people, the ones who actually grow, they rebuild with more windows, more doors, more access points. They become more vulnerable, not less, because they've learned that the armor doesn't actually protect you from pain. It just locks you in with it. Dr. Richard Tedeschi, who developed the concept, studied thousands of people who experienced major trauma, the ones who showed genuine growth, not just survival, but actual expansion of their capacity to live, all shared one specific trait. They maintained or restored their ability to emotionally engage with their lives despite having every reason not to. They felt the full weight of what happened to them. They didn't minimize it or optimize it or reframe it into some bullshit lesson. They felt it. And then they decided that their capacity to feel wasn't the problem. The problem was what happened. And those are very different things. This is the part where I need to introduce you to neuroplasticity, but not the Instagram version where everything can be fixed with positive thoughts. The real version. Your brain physically changes based on repeated patterns of thought and behavior. When you spend years suppressing emotional responses, you're literally pruning the neural pathways associated with emotional processing. Use it or lose it isn't just a saying, it's neurobiology. The good news, those pathways can be rebuilt. The bad news, rebuilding them is fucking excruciating, because you're not just learning to feel again, you're feeling everything you didn't let yourself feel while you were numb. All those accumulated losses and disappointments and betrayals you efficiently filed away, they're still there, waiting. And when you start to thaw, they thaw too. Maya, remember her? The consultant who hadn't cried in 3 years? When she finally did cry in our 7th session, she cried for 40 minutes straight. And it wasn't about one thing, it was about everything. Her dog? Yes. But also the promotion she didn't celebrate. The relationship that ended without her properly grieving it. The friend who moved away. The parent who got sick. The dreams she'd quietly abandoned. 3 years of unfelt feelings hit her all at once. And you know what she said afterward? I feel like I've been holding my breath for years and I finally remembered how to exhale. But also, I never want to do that again. That's the terror of recovery. The first real feeling after years of numbness isn't relief. It's overwhelm. It's chaos. It's every emotion you've been avoiding flooding back with compound interest. And this is where people make a critical decision, usually without realizing they're making it. They either lean into the overwhelm and let themselves feel it, which is absolute hell, but temporary hell, or they slam the doors shut again and double down on the numbness, because at least numbness is familiar. At least in the gray zone, they know the rules. They know how to function. Going back to feeling feels like going backward, like undoing all that hard-won maturity, so they don't. They stay in the fortress. They optimize their isolation. They convince themselves that this flatness is actually peace. And maybe for some people, maybe it is. But here's what I've observed over years of clinical work. The people who choose continued numbness don't stay stable. They continue to decline. Slowly, almost imperceptibly, but consistently. Because emotional exhaustion isn't a plateau. It's a degenerative condition. Each year they feel a little less, connect a little less, care a little less, until one day they wake up and realize they can't remember the last time they felt alive. Not happy, not sad, just alive, present in their own existence. And by then, the pathways back are so overgrown that rebuilding feels impossible. But let's talk about the ones who choose differently. The ones who decide that feeling too much is better than feeling nothing. What does recovery actually look like? It's not linear. It's not this beautiful arc from darkness to light. It's messy and inconsistent and frustrating. Some days you'll feel things and wish you didn't. Some days you'll slip back into numbness and it'll feel like relief. You'll have moments of genuine joy followed immediately by grief for all the joy you missed while you were shut down. You'll connect with people and then panic about how much it matters. You'll want things again, which means you'll be disappointed again. You'll invest in outcomes you can't control. You'll be vulnerable, and some people will absolutely take advantage of that vulnerability. All the things your exhaustion was protecting you from will come rushing back. And here's the part that sounds insane but is somehow true. That's the good outcome. That's what recovery looks like. It looks like being human again, with all the risk and pain and beauty and chaos that humans experience. It looks like caring about shit that might not work out. It looks like hoping when hope is statistically stupid. It looks like loving people who will eventually leave or die or change. It looks like wanting things in a world that doesn't guarantee you'll get them. The clinical term for this is emotional reintegration, but I prefer to think of it as remembering that you're an animal, not a machine. Machines optimize, animals feel, machines have efficiency metrics. Animals have messy, complicated, often contradictory internal experiences. And for years, you've been trying to run human software on machine hardware. It doesn't work. It never works. It just creates this uncanny valley version of a person who looks right from the outside, but feels hollow from the inside. So here's your choice. And it is a choice even though it doesn't feel like one. You can stay in the fortress. You can keep calling your emotional exhaustion maturity. You can continue optimizing your life into smaller and smaller boxes of manageable non-feeling. You can be fine, forever fine, functionally fine. You can watch other people feel things and be grateful you don't have to deal with that mess anymore. You can live a life that looks good on paper and feels like nothing in practice. That's completely valid. No judgment. Some people genuinely prefer it. Or you can do the terrifying thing. You can acknowledge that what you've been calling growth might actually be atrophy. You can admit that you're not evolved, you're exhausted. You can start the brutal work of feeling again, knowing it will hurt, knowing you'll fuck it up, knowing there's no guarantee it'll be worth it. You can choose to be a person instead of a well-functioning system. And here's what I can promise you. The only thing I can promise you, if you choose the second path, if you choose to feel again, you will hurt. You will be disappointed. You will care about things that don't work out. You will invest in people who let you down. You will hope for things that don't happen, but you will also laugh in a way that surprises you. You will cry and feel lighter afterward. You will want things with an intensity that terrifies and thrills you. You will connect with someone and feel that spark of genuine recognition. You will taste food and actually taste it. You will hear music and feel it move through you. You will be alive, messily, painfully, beautifully alive. Not fine, not optimized, not mature in that flat, dead way you've been calling maturity, but human. Fully, catastrophically, magnificently human. And the next time someone asks how you're doing, you might actually have an answer that isn't fine. You might say, I don't know, or it's complicated, or I'm feeling a lot right now. And that confusion, that complexity, that emotional chaos you've been avoiding, that's not a problem to solve. That's not something to optimize away. That's what being alive actually feels like. So the question isn't whether you can recover from emotional exhaustion disguised as maturity. The question is whether you want to, whether you're willing to trade the safety of numbness for the danger of feeling, and whether you're brave enough to hurt again. And I can't answer that for you. But I can tell you this. Every person I've watched make that choice, every single one who decided to feel again despite the cost, has told me the same thing eventually. Not right away, not in the beginning when it's all overwhelm and chaos, but later, once they've rebuilt some of those pathways, once they've remembered what it's like to be present in their own life. They say, I didn't realize how dead I was until I started living again. And you won't either, until you do.